Hello and welcome back to the Bukola Kadri channel, your number one source for German language and everything about living in Germany. Today, we're focusing on one crucial aspect of the immigration process, preparing for the family reunion visa interview. Now, let's dive into common questions you might be asked and how to prepare yourself better for it. The visa interview aims to assess the authenticity of the relationship to ensure that all legal requirements are met. I came to Germany through the family reunion visa almost 3 years ago, and today I'll be sharing with you first-hand information, what kind of questions I was asked. So let's get right into it. Let's explore some frequently asked questions during your family reunion visa interview. Number one, personal information. If you see me looking at the screen, it's because I have put it down somewhere and I'm looking at it so that I can give you accurate information. Is that okay? Thank you. So now they're going to ask you for your name, your date of birth, or your age, simply your age, and where you reside. For me, I was asked what is my date of birth and where do I stay. Okay, I guess this is just to make sure what you have tallies with the information they have. So first of all, you must have filled a form, applying for the family reunion visa. Now, this is the form that will be with the interviewer when they're interviewing you. So they're asking for your name and your age and all this information to make sure it tallies with what you are saying. And this is very important. I think it's important to mention it here that let your application process be done yourself, be involved fully in your application process, because if somebody had filled something wrong for you, maybe they've put your last name in the space of the middle name, for instance, and you have not that it really matters, but then it might matter depending on the interviewer. So it's important that you're fully immersed in the application process of your visa. The interviewer is checking all this to just make sure basically that what you're saying tallies with the information they already have, which you filled. Okay, is that okay? Good. Now they're going to ask about details about your spouse as well. Now they will tell you to tell them about your spouse, the name of your spouse, what's the date of birth of your spouse. For me, they asked me what's my husband's name, how old is he, his date of birth, where does he work, the name of the company. Yes. So if you're coming to meet your spouse, it's good to know the name of the company where they work, what they do in that company. Maybe not nitty-gritty details, but just because if you're married to somebody, you should know where they work, right, and what they do in that company, right? So yeah, that's why they're asking this type of information. Now they can say things like, can you tell us about your spouse's occupation and place of work in Germany? You can say, when and how did you meet your spouse? And that was the interesting part for me. They asked me when and where I met my spouse, and I was like, oh, it's a long story. The interviewer said, yes. For me, my interviewer was a man, an African. An African. I don't know if he's Nigerian. I imagine that he's Nigerian because the consulate was in Lagos, Nigeria, or is in Lagos, Nigeria. So, but then you could be interviewed by a German, for instance. That's also possible. I've heard of that. So he interviewed me, asked me for how we met and all of that. And I was like, oh, okay, you want to hear the story? And he's like, yeah, he's all ears. So I gave him the whole story, the gist, very long story. And I think maybe 1 or 2 minutes into my story, it was already like, okay, maybe he got what he wanted to get. I don't know what he was looking for in the story, but I told him I wasn't done because I wanted to tell him the story because it wasn't yet complete, right? So I described the place where we met. I think, because we didn't feel this type of information in any form, right? I think he just wanted to check maybe if I was genuine or something. And yeah, I explained to him. Also, I think don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just be confident. It's your story. Own it at the end of the day, right? So that's not a problem. Now, they're going to be asking you about your marriage specifics. Okay? Specifics like when did you get married? They can ask you for pictures of your marriage, which is also already a requirement in the form requirements, in the document requirement. When did you get married? How did you get married? And what dates? For me, I had done the legal marriage, which is the court wedding already. So I went to the interview with pictures. I printed out pictures. Printed them out. Also, I told him the date of the marriage. So don't be scared to make mistake, because now the date of the marriage was conflicting with my date of birth. Remember, I was just newly married. I wasn't used to, you know, uh, giving a date of marriage. So the only date I knew in my head was my date of birth. You know. So I said, "Oh, excuse me," and then I corrected myself, and that's okay, right? So I gave them dates of the marriage, and I showed them pictures as well when we got married, the date. And he asked me, "Oh, is there still going to be a church wedding or something like that?" And I said, "Yeah." He asked if he was invited, and I said, "Sure, provided you give me the visa." So, yes, it was a fun and interactive um, conversation. It wasn't too, I don't know if it was too formal. It wasn't too uptight. Yeah, it wasn't too uptight. I was just chill and I just gave him the answers. Also, I think I wasn't thinking, because my husband just said, "Oh, it was just going to be conversations, nothing serious." I didn't think it was an official interview. So, anyways, the interviewer was also formal enough, but then not too strict or anything. So, as he was asking questions, just in the conversation style, I was giving him the answers to. You see? So, yeah, details about your spouse, your marriage specifics, when and where did the wedding take place. I told him where. He asked if we were going to have another ceremony. I told him about the other ceremony and told him the dates, I think, and I told him I was invited. So it wasn't um a problem. Now they're going to ask you about communication in the relationship. This was what I was asked. I was asked how often we speak, how do we speak, and I'm like, I was wondering why they were asking this kind of information, right? Because why do you want to know the details of how we speak? What, like, that's personal. And then he was like, "Oh, he wants to hear all about it." I'm like, "Okay, cool. We do WhatsApp, we do." So the funny thing is, we do LinkedIn video calls because sometimes maybe WhatsApp is not working, or maybe something. I don't know. There's been a time we've done WhatsApp video call before. So I told him, sorry, LinkedIn video call. We have done LinkedIn video call, WhatsApp video call, Google Meet, Zoom, all sorts of technology, because at the time my husband and I were dating, he was here and I was in Nigeria. So we're using all sorts of mediums to communicate, but it was mainly WhatsApp, and I gave him that information, right? So they also asked how often, maybe when last I saw him, and I said, "Oh, it was the marriage, it was when we did the court wedding." And of course, the video calls is what we do. Now, for some people, I wasn't asked this. They might ask you about your future plans, what are your plans? Do you intend to work or study? I don't think I was asked that information. I can't remember, but I don't think I was asked, right? So they asked me about that as well. Now they might ask you about details about your spouse. You know, can you tell us about your spouse's occupation and where he works? In the occupation, I was asked how much he earns, net or gross, which I already know. So I gave them that information. They also asked about how he moved to Germany, and I told them, okay, he was here, he was somewhere, and then moved here. When he got a job to Germany. So that was how he moved to Germany. So I gave them that information as well, which is already everything they needed, right? And I'm going to get to the documents later. They also asked about the last time my husband was in Nigeria, which I told them. Now, another thing they asked is family support, or how we support each other. They asked where I was living, with who, with how many people. Just this information, like I said, is already some of the things filled in the form. How many people do you live with? Give numbers of your friends or family members that are close to you, something like that. So I already told them how many people I was living with and all that. Then they said, "How do I sustain myself?" So I told them, and then they said, "How, like, is it from my salary? Does my husband support?" And I said, "Yeah, cool. Both of us do it together, right? I work in Nigeria. I have enough to cover for myself, and also he was supporting me, which was really the main thing. It wasn't authenticity is really important, so I just gave them all that information, right? So they asked about that as well. Language proficiency is something that is really important. Now, before I moved to Germany that year where I went for the interview, I had started a language course in Goethe Institute in Nigeria, right? But because I wouldn't say it was so effective for me because I wasn't attending a physical class. That's not to say that online classes are not effective, but for me, I started the class late based on their mismanagement or something like that. I had the same surname with somebody else, and they had mixed it up, and they didn't send me the details of the class. I think 2 weeks had gone before I started the class, which were like 4 classes already. So I had that issue. So then I was also working, and I was also preparing for my wedding because court wedding and then wedding later in the year. So I was also preparing for my wedding in March, I think. Was it March? Can't remember. I only have the date of my church wedding, but if I check documents, I will have it. I was everywhere basically, so it wasn't so effective for me. And I was so worried that, oh, how would the class be A1 and all of that? Because for some spouses, you need A1. And eventually, my husband made me know that it's okay, I would learn when I get here, that I didn't necessarily need it because of his visa type, the EU blue card, right? So I wasn't asked any question in Deutsch, and I wasn't asked for any information, any certificate, any proof of German language when I went for the interview. If it wasn't that, I was gonna have to prove it, but I didn't prove it. And the interviewer asked me, he said, "Do you speak German?" He asked me in Deutsch. Remember, I told you I took a few classes so I could understand or make up what he said at the time. And I told him, I don't speak, but I'm learning. And he said, oh, it's good, you will need it. And that was all he said. So I didn't need to prove that I could speak German. Almost 3 years down the line, I can speak German. Okay? Ich kann Deutsch sprechen. Yeah. One of the requirements is that you would take some amount of money. I don't know, it was about 100 something thousand naira at the time to verify your documents. I didn't need it again because of the visa type, EU blue card. So I didn't need it, and my money was not even collected from me. I just had to pay the visa fee, which was about 30 something thousand naira. For the verification fee, it wasn't collected from me, so I took my money back home. But you might need it for any other visa type, for instance. You may have to do your findings. So for me, it wasn't required, and I took my money back home. Language also wasn't required, and I took my money back home. They might ask you what city you're going to. I don't think they will ask you about specific address. They didn't ask me that because I didn't need to cram my house address, right? But they asked me about where I was moving to, and I told them the city I was going to come to. Basically, these questions are just there to prepare you for your future life in Germany, and also to prove or verify your genuineness, to make sure that your relationship with who you said you have in Germany is a genuine relationship, basically. So if you're saying the truth, there shouldn't be a problem. Now, here are some extra tips to help you succeed. Number one is to be honest and consistent. Make sure you provide truthful answers that are consistent with your documents. Don't say one thing and say another thing, and then what is in your document is another thing. Okay, do not allow anybody fill your form for you. It's something you can do by yourself. Sincerely, in Germany, everything you have to do by yourself. Don't try to pay agents, it's not worth it. Just fill the forms yourself, like I always say. And also, just if you did the processing yourself, you won't have to be remembering what you put there. Okay, so be consistent and be honest. Now, organize your documents. Have all your necessary documents already put together. Usually they'll tell you not to use a staple pin. You can use an office pin, which is what I did. And then I used a bookmark to bookmark, and separate the documents. And there's this guy everybody knows. I can't remember his name now. I think it's an Igbo name. One man at the entrance, I had his name there for so long, and he would stress you. He would frustrate you as much as possible. I don't know why. When you get to the entrance, the gate, before you then go into the interview section, don't fret. Just sit, be cool, calm, composed. He wouldn't try to frustrate you if you're not cool, calm, and composed. Also, he would do like a pre-check on your documents before you get in, right? So he did that for me. My documents were already complete. Now, at the end of the interview, one of my documents wasn't I think one or two of my documents wasn't included, which I wasn't sure about, and I'll tell you why in the next video about the documents, right? And I'll tell you why I said don't use an agent. Okay, demonstrate genuine relationship. Like I said, they're going to ask you details about your spouse, some things you consider unnecessary and too personal, but be ready to just give them those personal, because that's how they're able to verify that you're genuine. So be ready to answer personal questions, but I don't think anything will be too personal, if you get what I mean. Give details to highlight the authenticity of your relationship. Now, for language, you may need to show cultural and language preparedness. Like I said, most often than not, if you want to come to Germany, language is really important, at the least A1, right? So you may need to know a few words. You may need to know what is your name in German. They may ask you to spell your name with the German alphabet. They may ask you to tell them your phone number with the German numbers, right? So you may need to be prepared to show preparedness that you are ready to come to this city, to this country by, the language. But I don't think they will ask you anything like in a B1 level or B2 level, for instance, right? Just show that you are enthusiastic about coming to Germany. Remember, preparation is the key to a successful interview. Now, if you found this video useful and helpful, remember to like, share, and hit the notification bell for more insights on living in Germany, German language, and everything around that. Thank you for watching. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen.